Welcome back to All This Math. This is Professor Parker. You're tuned into some Keystone Algebra 1 review. All right, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you drop a comment down below, especially if you have a question. If you have a question about anything that I'm about to explain, anything that's not fully 100% clear to you, make sure you ask the question in the comments. I know some of y'all sit in class and be intimidated and don't want to raise your hand and ask questions in class. Drop the question in the comments and I will answer the question as soon as I'm notified of it. All right. Also, share this video with somebody. All right. Now, the Keystone Algebra 1 is an exam that students take in Pennsylvania as a measurement of their algebra proficiency. However, if you're not in Pennsylvania, you're in another state, right, in the United States, there are other math standardized tests that have similar content. So this topic will help you too. All right. Anyway, let's read the problem. Now, one thing I want to say, a lot of students, when they see a question like this, they immediately fold. They get intimidated. They experience something that we educators call cognitive overload or inundation. Don't try your best as a student to not let that happen. Teachers, acknowledge this, right? Tell the students to slow down, take their time, read every question one word at a time, one sentence at a time. All right? Let them know it's not that deep. All right? Give them that encouragement. All right, so let's read this. This says Siani is solving the system of equations below. Here go the system right here. A system of equations, of course, is when you have multiple equations. You could have 2 equations, 3 equations, 4, 5, however many. Typically, you're going to have as many equations as you have different variables. Notice this has a W in it and a T in it. This has a W in it and a T in it. That's 2 different variables we have. All right. So we got 2 different equations. We got 2 different equations because we got 2 different variables. If we had 3 different variables, in order to solve for all 3 variables, we would need 3 different equations, perhaps. All right, let's keep reading. Siani correctly uses elimination. That's very key. Elimination. Elimination is one of the methods that we use to solve systems of equations. The most popular methods for solving systems of equations are elimination, substitution, and the graphing method. There's some other methods also dealing with matrices, Cramer's rule, stuff like that. But the top 3, right? The top 3 picks for solving a system is going to be either elimination. Some textbooks call it the addition method because you end up adding the top equation to the bottom equation, right? In order to eliminate one of the variables. But elimination, substitution, and the graphing method. All right. Siani correctly uses elimination to solve the system of equations, meaning figure out what the numerical values of W and T are. Her first step is to rewrite one equation, one of them, not both of them, one of them. So one of the variables can be eliminated. We call it the elimination method. Like, dig this, right? Everything in math has a name for a reason, right? If you know why something is called what it's called, and you know the name of it and why it's called that, then that'll help you to remember what steps you need to take in order to use that method. So this is called the elimination method because you're going to eliminate one of the variables. And then that's going to leave you with just what? One variable. Because right now we got 2 different variables. All right. If we eliminate one of them, we end up with one variable, and then we can solve for that one variable because we can only solve for one variable at a time if we're trying to find a numerical value. All right. So one of the variables can be eliminated, right? Either W or T. Which system could show Siani's rewritten, after she rewrites it, system of equations? Now, this is a multiple choice sample question from online, I should say, right? I did not use up this limited space to write the answer choices, but you can find the answer choices underneath of this video, right? If you're looking at this on YouTube, you can find the 4 answer choices underneath of this video if you're looking at this on YouTube, right? So you can look there for them. But we don't even need answer choices because even if this was not a multiple choice question, even if it was a constructive response or an open-ended question, we would still be able to find the answer if we just understand what was said in this narrative. Her first step is to rewrite one equation, one of them. So one of the variables can be eliminated. So one of the variables can be eliminated. Dig this, right? Let's say she wanted to eliminate the W's, right? Now, this is also why some textbooks, pay attention, make sure you're paying attention. This is why some textbooks also call this the addition method, because you add the top equation to the bottom equation. Just like back in the day, elementary school doing addition, where you stack the numbers on top of each other, add the top digits to the bottom digits. It's a similar concept, right? So if this is a positive 3W and this is a positive 6W, if I add those, I get 9W. Don't nothing get eliminated, all right? But what if this 3W was a negative 6W? What if it was a negative 6W? What's negative 6W plus 6W? That's 0 or 0W, which is still 0. So that eliminates the W. That's what would happen. Or what if this 6W, instead of being a 6W, was a negative 3W? What if that was a negative 3W? What's 3W plus negative 3W? That's also 0. All right? Now, in order to make this 3W into a negative 6W, what would you do? Watch this. Watch this. So let's say I wanted to change this 3W into a negative 6W, right? You got to know a little bit of math and some multiplication facts. And you also got to understand how to do arithmetic with positives and negatives, right? In order to do this. This is like a game. It's like a puzzle. That's all this is. It ain't really that deep. So let's say I rewrite the question, right? Not the question, but the equation, the top equation. And if I want to make this 3W turn into a negative 6W, I would multiply this by negative 2. But here's the thing. I can't just multiply that term by negative 2. I got to multiply the whole equation by negative 2. Everything gets multiplied by negative 2. The whole joint gets multiplied by negative 2. Not just what I'm trying to change. Everything else got to change also. So that way the equation stays balanced, right? Everything gets multiplied by a factor of negative 2. All right. So then this will become negative 6W minus 14T. Because what's negative 2 times 7? I told you, you got to know your multiplication facts to do this. All right. This is you got to bring something to the table. You got to know your multiplication facts. Right. And then negative 2 times 64 is negative 128. So that would be your new equation. And then if you added this to that, stack this on top of that, what's going to happen to the W's? They're going to cancel out and get eliminated. So it says Siani, her first step is to rewrite one equation so one of the variables can be eliminated. Which system could show Siani's rewritten system of equations? So in one of the answer choices, this could be one of the rewritten equations in the system, right? Now, what if you wanted to eliminate the t's? If you wanted to eliminate the t's, the least common multiple of 7 and 2 is 14. So in order to eliminate the t's, one way you'd have to do that is you'd have to multiply both equations. In some systems, in order to eliminate a variable, you got to multiply both equations by a certain number. Because you could change this to a 14t and then change this into a negative 14t. And then when you add 14 and negative 14, that adds up to 0, right? So that means the t's will be eliminated because you would end up with 0t. And what does 0t mean? Think about that. Ask yourself, in case anybody listening to this is confused right now. 0t is the same thing as saying 0 times t. And what happens when you multiply 0 by any number or variable? You end up with 0. That's why the t will be eliminated, because it turns into a 0. That's elimination. It's gone. Right? Like you spend all your money is eliminated. You start with $50, you spend $50, now you got $0. That $50 has been eliminated. It's the same concept. All right. So dig it. So that would not suffice. So getting rid of the t's, you wouldn't be able to follow what Siani did because, again, we gotta read, right? We gotta read and comprehend. It says her first step is to rewrite one equation. So one of the variables can be eliminated, not two equations. They don't say rewrite two equations. In order to eliminate the t's, we'd have to rewrite two equations because we'd have to multiply this top equation by, let's say, negative 2 to make that a negative 14t, and the bottom equation by a positive 7 to make that a positive 14t. So you got to really know your multiplication facts in order to play this game. All right. Now let's go back to the W's though, right? Because we could get rid of the W's by changing this 3W to a negative 6W. But also, what if you wanted to change? We could also change this 6W to a negative 3W. Watch this. Let me rewrite the bottom equation. So let's say we had 6W plus 2T is equal to 44. All right. Now, if I want the W's to cancel out or get eliminated, right? If this was a negative 3W, then they would get eliminated. Because ask yourself, what does 3W plus negative 3W add up to? It adds up to 0 because 3 plus negative 3 equals 0. All right. Now, if there's anything I've been saying, like I told you, if you got questions, drop them in the comments, please. Also, rewind the video. Just run it back. It might make more sense the second time you hear me say it, or even the third time. So now I want to eliminate the W's. So what if this was a negative 3W? Then you'd have 3W plus negative 3W. They would cancel out or eliminate, right? Cancel out, eliminate. They mean the same thing. What do I multiply by 6 to make it a negative 3? Negative 1/2. That's why we got to be sharp with fractions too. We got to understand fractions. So look, let's say I multiply this by negative 1/2. But again, I got to multiply everything by negative 1/2, not just the 6W. Everything is multiplied by negative 1/2. So then I'm going to have negative 3W minus T equals negative 22, right? And then the W's would cancel out, right? So that's another way that Siani could have did the problem to eliminate the W. She could have eliminated the W's by changing this to a negative 6W, or she could have eliminated the W's by changing the 6W to a negative 3W by multiplying by certain numbers. All right. And it talks about her only rewriting one equation, not both equations, not two equations. Because in order to eliminate the T's, you would have to multiply both equations by a certain number in order to have these T variable terms become opposites. All right. So just a little something that you might see on the Keystone Algebra 1 exam. But make sure you know how to solve systems of equations. If you're real tight with solving systems of equations using the elimination method, then a problem like this really just is questioning your method, making sure you really understand the method and the process of solving a system of equations using the elimination method. That's all that's really going on here. All right. So like I said, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you share this video with some other people. Make this go viral, man. People need to really understand like how to do this math. It's really not that deep, right? We just got to understand how to do it, right? So there's plenty of resources. You know, math should not be a barrier for nobody. I got almost 900 videos on this channel right here, right? Like real talk. Like check for yourself, right? You know what I'm saying? Like just share this with people, put the word out, let people know it's out here. And, you know, so we shouldn't be hearing those news reports every single year about, you know, standardized test scores in math are abysmal. Only 1% of the school children scored proficient and all that. The resources are available. We got to start using them, and we got to start sharing them. The people that know about them got to start sharing them more, right? So we can make this normal. All right. So, any questions? Drop them in the comments, and I'll respond as soon as I see them and I get the notification. All right. Like the video, share the video. Like I said, I'll see you on the next video. Peace.